Good afternoon and welcome to episode 51 of the Jacksonian. I'm yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I got a good buddy of mine who is the host of Locked On Oklahoma State, the go-to podcast for Oklahoma State fan nation, the one and only himself, Cody Stovall, as we'll be going over what's been going on with those Cowboys in their performance against Utah. What's the take on against Kansas State? How's Ollie Gordon doing? And much, much more. And I'll tell you something, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
I'm doing okay, right? The loss to Utah was definitely debilitating to some degree, right? I covered it. There's a handful of times where a loss like that kind of felt that way, at least internally demoralizing. And you could go back to 97 double overtime against Mizzou. You go to 2013 Bedlam, 2017 Bedlam, 2005 Texas, 2007 Texas. Those are some of the times where we let games get away from us. But the difference is, Jackson, at least those games were competitive. At least half of the game was entertaining. This game, we got 54 minutes of, I don't know what that was, and about 5.5 minutes of a little bit of semblance of offensive football. But offensively, like we only had the ball for 17 minutes, and 14, 15 of the 17 minutes was offensive to watch.
Oof. I mean, that day was just a bad day. But I will say though, thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it, man. It's awesome. And for those who didn't see the first episode back in November or just learning about you, try telling me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I cover Oklahoma State on a daily basis for Locked On Oklahoma State, and then I also travel and do some 7-on-7 high school recruiting. I help with prospect sports 7-on-7, and realistically, man, I think my biggest takeaway from what I've been able to do is apply a little bit of college football knowledge. Right, I was able to play wide receiver at Friends University. Go Falcons! And, it's not a big time level, but it did give me a lot of opportunities to continue to learn more about film and the playbook and the clipboard and understanding why certain defenses were set up against certain routes. And so the knowledge of football, I think, was something that has allowed me to look at film from a little bit of a different perspective on top of being a diehard fan that bleeds orange, buddy.
There we go. Nice. There we go. So, start off the show, of course, and unfortunately, it was a bad day at home. You're going against Utah. Looks like they're not going to have Bad Moon Rising, but they got Zach Wilson's brother, Isaac Wilson. Yeah. Surely that's going to be a cinch. No Texas, no Oklahoma, no nobody, no nothing to stand in the way of the Oklahoma State Cowboys. What was going on in the first half exactly?
Well, the first half was lack of offensive creativity, which was extremely frustrating because the very first drive, we were doing some odd things, right? And we also had a wildcat formation where everybody expected Ollie to keep the ball and he handed it off to Brendan Presley. And then we completely abandoned it. So it's like we had a script for one series and then we didn't have a script for the entirety of the rest of the game. The problem is, this has been an issue with our offensive coordinator, Casey Dunn, for years. Like I just covered on my show the other day, from 2013 to 2020, we were ranked anywhere from 13th in the country, 4th in the country, to 21st in the country offensively, right? And then Casey Dunn's first year, we fall to 51st, and we go to 47th, and then we go to 54th, and now we're 65th. Jackson, there's only 67 Power 4 football teams. We're 65th in offensive success rate. That's what happened. And it's been happening for years. And for whatever reason, Mike Gundy keeps allowing the offense to show ineptitude while the defense, it's sometimes hit and miss. If we're trying to allow the defense to be our calling card, that's okay. But you still have to have an offense that's good enough or beneficial enough to help your team win when the defense only gives up 2 touchdowns. We gave up 2 touchdowns to Utah, and we couldn't do anything.
Yeah, that's just not good. And I just don't know what to say, but it's just it feels like you said, it feels like another missed opportunity. One year I keep thinking back to is '09. You have a big win against Georgia. You lose to Casey Keenum and Houston. Rivalry week looks like you're gonna go to a BCS Bowl, but you lose to an Oklahoma team with Landry Jones at QB. That was a team that lost Sam Bradford that year.
There's been times where it's obviously been rough, but again, for an entire 4 quarters, that was difficult to watch, man. And again, offensively, you're okay with having some down games, but I don't understand why Mike Gundy is okay with us being down for 4 years now offensively. Like, even if you think back to 2021, brother, our offense was putrid. I don't even think we were averaging anywhere near 30 points a game. I think it was like 27 points a game, 24 points a game, something like that. And the only reason we were able to win 12 games is because that was the greatest, if not the greatest, the second greatest defense in Oklahoma State history. We have the athletes to have a good defensive performance, and we have the athletes offensively. We just don't have the coaching on offense to make it make sense. Our quarterbacks are not developing. Our offensive linemen are regressing, and our offensive play calling is so pedestrian that we've had several teams now talk about how they knew all of our route trees before the play was ever even ran. How many years do we need to hear that and it be embarrassing before we do something about it? I don't get it, Jackson. Like, it legitimately feels like Casey Dunn has something on Mike Gundy, because Mike Gundy doesn't allow ineptitude at other positions. He fired Greg Richmond, which was an Oklahoma State Cowboy alumni defensive line coach, because of the need to excel this year. I think Mike Gundy knew the lay of the land without OU, without Texas, and 20 returning starters, 90% of the roster. This had to be the year. And then we lay that dud, and I just talked about it in today's show. Alan Bowman, in his post-game press conference from yesterday or Monday, he was just talking about how it's no big deal. It's only one game, and it's the first time they'd seen cover one all year, so that's what messed him up. It's like, dude, you've been playing college football for 7 years, and you're telling everybody publicly that cover one, you still can't figure it out? Like, what are we doing?
It's bad.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've been seeing the rushing yards for Ollie Gordon this year, and so far his stats have been down, and it's not looking good. So from what I've seen so far, I know they were down against Arkansas, and he had 49 yards. 126, I believe that's the most he's had this season. That was against South Dakota State.
Yeah, and that's the only time he's broke 50 yards this year.
Yeah, that's not good. It's just...
Now, and again, Jackson, like, you watch a lot of football, you cover a lot of football, you have a lot of guests on your show. If you have the Doak Walker Award winner returning that ran for almost 1,800 yards, and you have all 5 offensive linemen returning 172 starts, and you're returning quarterback, right, and all of your returning wide receivers, what could possibly be the issue? Did Ollie Gordon just all of a sudden become terrible at running back? Did all of the offensive linemen forget how to run block completely when they're all seniors? Or could it be that the offense coordinator is so inept that everybody's looking?
Yeah. It could be that they're like overly reliant on Ollie Gordon, because I mean it's like the Titans where they got reliant on Derrick Henry, and all you really had to do was beat Derrick Henry, and you got the Titans right where you want them. Feels like same thing with Oklahoma State.
I mean, it's not entirely inaccurate, right? That's been everybody's game plan this year, is to shut down Ollie Gordon, make Alan Bowman throw, and against teams that were just clearly better than, we can get away with it. But against teams that are as good as us and maybe even a little bit better than us, that's when the problem areas arise.
Well, and we got the rest of the 2024 season pulled up. So, of course, this Saturday on ESPN, the Cowboys have to go to K-State. Then you got West Virginia coming to your backyard next week. Then there's that BYU game. Now, BYU is definitely gunning for revenge, and that's going to be a tough one. Baylor, we don't really know what their coaching situation is. Arizona State, they've had a pretty good start thus far. TCU, their magic from 2022 has died off, unfortunately for them. Texas Tech, they're living off the coattails of the Mike Leach legacy.
Still.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we have Mike Leach. Like, yeah, okay. How does it translate in 2024? If it weren't for Mike Leach, you'd be where Oregon State, Washington State are.
I mean, yeah, you're not entirely wrong there.
And then there's the Colorado matchup on Black Friday. I just wonder if Colorado will storm the field for after every win.
Bro, you stole that right out of my mouth. I was about to say we cannot lose to Colorado. I do not want to see them rush the field. If they rush the field for over beating Baylor, you know they're chomping at the bit to rush the field to beat us.
It's like those guys that are like, you know, they're just like bragging about watching Roadhouse, like kind of like how Ron Weiss says, like, Patrick Swayze hit another guy.
So, oh Jackson, if you go back, you don't have to pull it back up. I have the memory banks of it, but the schedule before the season started, I had Utah and K-State as losses. I changed the Utah loss because Utah fans made me so irritated. So I let the ego kind of kick in a bit, but I did have us losing to Kansas State before the season started for one reason and one reason only. We struggle mightily against mobile quarterbacks. And he ran a 4.38 40 before he put on weight. So even after weight, he still runs a 4.4 40. That's a problem. Then you have DJ Giddens at 311 yards, 6.1 yards per carry. Avery Johnson is 248 yards at 7.1 yards per carry. Then you have Dylan Edwards, 180 yards at 7.4 yards per carry. Like, that rushing attack is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I will throw the caveat in that our struggle has been against the passing game primarily. If you want to look at Mekhi Bernard for Utah going for 180 yards, that's applicable. But I also implore everybody to take into consideration that our defense was on the field for almost 43 minutes and had to play over 80 snaps. You would expect a competent running back to have a good day if he's getting the ball that amount of times, right? That's the only bright side to this game is we're much better in run support than we are in the back end. But sometimes we're really good at shutting down running backs and tight ends, but we struggle against mobile quarterbacks. It's I don't know, man, that triple option style of effect. It's the same thing that UCF has. So now I'm deathly afraid of UCF too. And I'm not afraid of West Virginia, but what does West Virginia have, Jackson?
Top-notch quarterback and Garrett
They have a
Green.
mobile quarterback who runs a 4.5 40.
Yeah, I mean, we learned from those last two drives of West Virginia, Kansas. If Garrett Green is utilized correctly, they win ball games. But luckily, you guys don't have to deal with Central Florida this season.
Which is actually a little bit of a shame. I will admit that last year, that absolute epic beatdown they gave us after winning 6 games in a row. Yeah, we're out for a little bit of retribution. But you know what? Maybe we can course correct. Maybe Mike Gundy can take the headset away from Casey Dunn and say, you know what, dude, you go grab a mop and a bucket. I'll handle the play calling duties. And if something like that were to take place, we've got the talent and the returning senior leadership to keep the locker room galvanized enough to still make a run at the Big 12 title. The problem I see now, though, is in order for the Big 12 to get 2 teams in the CFP, it was going to take a TCU and Baylor style of scenario, correct? Or TCU K-State, sorry, where TCU was undefeated and K-State won, right, the Big 12 title game, but because TCU went in rolling so well and being undefeated, they still got a ticket, and then they beat Michigan, yada, yada, yada. With the Big 12 being in the situation that it's in now, right, K-State having a loss, Oklahoma State having a loss, this is supposed to be 2 of the Big 12 title contenders, then which one of is going to drop to 0-2. I don't see an 0-2 team having enough leeway to go storming back all the way to the Big 12 title game, remaining at 2 losses to keep 2 teams in the CFP a possibility. So now it's, if we lose one more game, if we don't win the Big 12 title game, that's it. We're back to bowling. And that was not supposed to be the season. The next time the NIL collective gets gathered up and the fan base all donate to QR codes to keep Ollie Gordon and 5 offensive linemen and a 7th-year quarterback, it's not going to look the same. The fan base is not going to respond the same way that what he did, because this was all new to us. And Mike Gundy getting behind NIL was also new. When he did, and we had the ability to find a way to dig deep as a fan base and a donor base to keep Ollie Gordon and all of the O-linemen, we did that, right? We made NIL money that nobody thought was possible at Oklahoma State to a dude who now just looks like a random guy off the street because of our O-line and our offensive coordinator, in my opinion. And it's causing Ollie to run very frustrated, right? You can usually tell when a running back is a freshman because they're not utilizing vision, right? They get happy feet and they slam into the back of their O-lineman. That's what Ollie's doing, which he wasn't doing last year. But I asked people to also be mindful that the first 3 games last year, Ollie was not the starter. He was competing for a job. Maybe that competition partially helped drive him to become the running back he was last year. Maybe getting all of that money and being the unquestioned, tried and true leader from day one factored in with all of this new frustration that his offensive line can't open a hole to save their lives. Now he's running like a true freshman.
Yeah. And that's going to have to get figured out quick against Kansas State on Saturday. They've got to get it figured out, because if they don't win that game, they're I wouldn't say they're completely out of title contention in conference play, but they're going to need a lot of magic.
Yeah.
After, and I always tell people, don't ever put yourself in a position where you need somebody to win or lose.
Yeah, and that's, again, the Big 12, at least recent memory, has been decapitating itself by beating each other up. And at this point in time, it appears as though that's the same scenario we're in now. But I do think it's more problematic than ever, because we can all say what we want, whether OU and Texas deserve to get the love that they did or not. I'm not saying they did or didn't. Regardless, they still carried enough weight and a name that they were going to get the benefit of the doubt. Nobody in the Big 12 is going to get the benefit of the doubt. Nobody. Maybe Utah, but even then, there's some negativity revolving around Utah being in the Big 12, right? So it just, I don't know, man. We're in a rough spot, and I don't see an easy way out of it, because we have over 4 years of Casey Dunn doing the same exact thing, putting forth atrocious performances that either rely on the defense to step up and be the hero, or at one point in time we had Spencer Sanders, right? So sometimes we could call horrendous plays, but he would still rush for 120 yards and make something crazy happen that would equal a win. And I think some of the winning ways have buried the fact that Casey Dunn is horrendous for quite some time.
Well, he's gonna have to go, it sounds like, because I mean, either he goes, like Gundy kind of needs somebody to put their foot down, be like, "Hey, either Casey Dunn goes, or you're gonna make a regretful announcement that this has been your last year, or 2025 is your last year. Make a choice."
Well, dude, Chad Weiberg, I think a lot of us have faith in Chad Weiberg, but at the same time, this has been problematic for years, and we just keep brushing it under the rug. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results for whatever reason, right? And we know Mike Gundy, whenever he's 70, 65, will write a book, and then we'll know why he hung on to Casey this long, knowing that statistically he's at the bottom of the Big 12 almost every year. We'll know it at some point in time, but until then, we're going to be left scratching our heads trying to figure out how a once prolific year after year after year top 15 offense is now prolifically at the very back of the nation offensively. It's wild, man.
But I'll tell you something that's pretty hard to believe. BYU being unbeaten. And, on last year, for those that watched like this at the first time that I had on Cody, I called for College Game Day or Big Noon Kickoff to at least show some respect to the Bedlam. I didn't like it one bit. And it's like, even though I'm a Bama fan, I still want to see like the last edition of the Bedlam get some respect, because that was a conference game that had some huge implications, and fortunately it did. I want to see something like, if Utah and BYU are unbeaten, I want to see it on either Big Noon Kickoff or College Game Day go to town.
Oh, I agree with you. I think before the season started, everybody had circled Utah, Oklahoma State as the most likely opportunity for game day, right? Obviously, that didn't work. Oklahoma State, K-State, maybe, but now that we both have a loss, that would never work. So you're right. It's going to take UCF, BYU, or Utah to get a big enough draw for that to work, because I don't think we have anybody left on our schedule that is going to dictate, that level of game day atmosphere. I will say, as it pertains to the Bedlam matchup, at least the viewership and the atmosphere equaled the intensity. You all know that that's just Paul Feinbaum putting his foot in his mouth and doing his job to be the SEC buffoon. And again, the viewership and the game in and of itself and the implications all thankfully proved Paul Feinbaum wrong. But yeah, he was the one that kind of spun up that narrative. And we don't have a lot of those marquee matchups. Again, we go back to Texas. We beat them 9 out of 12 years before last year's Big 12 title game. So we love playing Texas. But even when they were bad, that was an opportunity to be on a Big Noon Kickoff College Game Day style of event. We don't have a lot of those. So you're right. We need BYU to keep winning. But at the same time, we need Utah to keep winning, and we need BYU to maybe lose one or two. It's just, like you mentioned, the downside of losing is then you have to start watching other people's games, and you need other people to start winning or losing too.
Yeah. And, you don't want to get yourself in that kind of position. But I'm kind of curious about Dave Aranda, though, because I mean, it looks like his seat is scorched. I mean, it has to be blazing hot. I mean, your team gave it away against Colorado on a game time Hail Mary pass.
Yeah, I just don't think so, man. I mean, I think maybe he should be, but he is 2 years removed from a Big 12 title, so that trophy is still very, very shiny walking down them halls. And they didn't bat an eye last season after he went 3-9 about firing him, right? So I do think that he has a little bit of a longer leash than that, because Baylor is traditionally really bad, kind of bad, boom, they're really, really good. And then they go right back down to being average, kind of bad. You know what I mean? That they're the exact opposite of Oklahoma State. We're always winning 8 to 11 games year after year after year after year, but we only have one trophy to show for it. They have 5-win years, 3-win years, 6-win years, 12-win year, but they have multiple titles, right? So yeah. I've actually asked people before, would you rather be consistent like Oklahoma State and know that you're always going to have a shot at a title but never win one? Or would you rather be Baylor, knowing that you could be dog water for 3 years but then magically win a Big 12 title? I don't know.
I love that dog water. That I'm gonna use that and just be like, oh well, that team's dog water. There we go.
I'm here for you, bud. I'm here for you.
There we go. We gotta get that quote trademarked for you, man.
You know what? I try to keep things fresh and make things fun, and being quick-witted occasionally is beneficial.
There we go. But yeah, like Dave Aranda, that 2021 season where they won the Big 12 and the Sean Madonna puberty voice on that game-winning play came out, of course. That's the only winning season for Baylor. They won the Sugar Bowl. Everybody was cheering for Baylor. And then they let go of their heads, of course. They've not had a winning record since or before that monumental 2021 season. So I can't help but feel like if Baylor doesn't upset BYU at the very least, or if they don't go back to a bowl or go 7-5, there will be some conversations to be had in Waco, Texas.
I don't think Baylor fans have any right to complain about whatever their record is because they refuse to fill that stadium. In
True.
2021, they weren't filling the stadium, bro. So even when they're winning Big 12 titles, their fans don't care. So why would they care what their coach's record is?
Yeah, because I mean, I think honestly that they'll look at Texas State and they're gonna go, "Hey, Mr. Ken,
Dude,
want to come
GJ
to
Kinney, he was I think we talked about this last year. I thought GJ Kinney was the hottest up and coming name in the game, and I didn't think that he was going to stay at Texas State. They paid him almost Power 4 money to stay, so I get it, but they're not going to be able to do that forever. He is just too good and too innovative, and he has a lot of roster turnover, right? Because if you're really good at Texas State, you typically end up at a Baylor or a TCU or a Houston.
Yeah.
And so he dealt with some of that, and then he had to bring people in from the portal, and he's doing the same thing. That consistency proves that is a good coach. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not a once. So whether it's TCU or Baylor, I do feel like GJ Kinney is going to be a Power 4 coach next year. Easy.
not a matter of if, but when."
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, but also I've never understood people underestimating Kansas State, where it's like, I'm sorry, but have you got? And these are like the people that didn't list Kansas State as a contender. I'm like, I'm sorry, but did you not watch that 2022 Big 12 title? I mean, we did, but some of those media people that were writing the polls, they didn't write Kansas State on that list or anything. They didn't talk about K-State or nothing. It's like, did you see Chris Kleiman? Dude's a magician.
Dude, they're kind of like us, huh? They're very consistent. They're always going to win 8, 10 ball games almost every single year. You can pretty much write it down in stone. Yeah, it's two programs that are very comparable. Their consistency is about the same. The 65 years of being absolutely horrendous is about the same. The come up at some point in time in the 80s is fairly reminiscent. You know what I mean? And I looked up this stat last year. I might be a little off, right? But I think over the last 20 years, it was like 85% of the time, K-State, O-State came down to one score or 10 points. It doesn't matter who the better team is. This plays like a rivalry game, even though we're so nice to each other, it will never be one. But the game plays out that way, right? The scores are fairly indicative of it being a rivalry. The difference is we're all hugging and super friendly in the stands. So we can't ever be rivals with K-State. It's kind of a daggone shame that we love each other so much. But it's part of the difficulty is we're like the same. I don't know if you've ever been to Manhattan.
Unfortunately, no.
If you've been to Stillwater, you've pretty much been to Manhattan. It's very, very comparable. The way the town's laid out is even somewhat comparable. The way their strip is kind of like our strip. We're just we're two peas in a pod, and we both have very underwhelming offensive lines for differing reasons. Our offensive line is showing up instead of with a hammer and a lunch pail ready to go to work and go to war. Our O-line packs a bunch of feathered down pillowcases when they step on the football field. K-State doesn't have that problem. They're not playing powder puff soft football with their O-line. They're just fundamentally not as sound. So we're more technical, more fundamentally sound than them, but we don't have a single offensive lineman that has that ugly, dirty, nasty streak in them. They have a bunch of those dudes that'll pound your face into the turf, but they're going to miss fundamentals and techniques a decent amount. So both those lines are struggling mightily, but for two completely different reasons.
Well, and as we saw the Oklahoma State schedule for the rest of this year, what's the most likely record that you see for them? That doesn't sound good.
Well, I just there's a reluctancy from Mike Gundy to fix the Casey Dunn problem, right? Hopefully it's just coach speak, because Mike Gundy did prove he can dive back into the facilities, the locker room, and kind of change everything last year. So he's proven he can do it. But when it comes to Casey Dunn specifically, he's also proven for years he will not do it. So unless Casey Dunn has some magical epiphany or somebody else starts calling plays, this is starting to look like an 8-4 style of year, man.
And that's not a good thing. You can't go 8-4 with this team.
No, dude. Dude, next time I hear 20 returning starters, I'm gonna go, so what? We've seen it mean absolutely nothing. We've seen teams bring in 25 new transfers and it revolutionized their roster. Look at Mel Tucker at Michigan State. Now, it didn't last, right? But teams have redistributed their scholarships for primarily transfers and been successful. I don't think that's the right business model to continuously be successful, right? But at the same time, I was so pumped up about 20 returning starters and 90% of the roster, and we're not playing like it. We don't look like it. It's I've never seen this much talent and this much senior leadership look absolutely abysmal.
It's terrible. But the one thing about being down is the only way to go is up.
There you go. And you know what, man? You know me. I'm a super upbeat, fiery, excited guy. I typically inject a decent amount of orange Kool-Aid, but some people may call me negative Nancy this week. I just feel like I'm being realistic. What we struggle against, we're about to play. And what we struggle against, we just saw. Isaac Wilson's not the most fleet of foot. I don't think he's as fast as Zach. And he was still able to get loose and bust for almost a 90 yards on us.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so basically, we have to rely on our defensive coordinator putting forth a remarkable game plan. And I will say for over 3.5 quarters, he did a very good job against Utah. But when it's 100, it was 101 degrees live, and it was like 117 real feel. And I distinctly recall hearing at one point in time, unless the heat was just burning my ear holes, that the field temp was 162. So, I mean, again, another hats off to Utah. We're conditioned for that stuff, and it was killing us. I didn't think they were going to be able to do that for 4 quarters. But again, fast forward to our offensive coordinator, we didn't spread them out. Like, if you know that it's going to be 160 degrees on the field, and you know that it has maybe never gotten that hot for that Utah football team in their home state, why would you not try to stress them out and physically get them to start cramping and putting in their backups? We didn't do that. Like, we didn't make it difficult on them. And that's the most frustrating part. And again, negative Nancy Cody's coming out, but this has been the same for years. Casey Dunn will have 2, maybe 3 really good games a year. And the rest are all, say it with me, Jackson, they're all dog water.
Dog water. Dog water. There you go. Word of the day, dog water. Oh man, I hope the puppy dogs don't hear that, because it's like, no, we don't mean that towards you. We mean it towards other animals.
Yeah. Well, just tell them I stole it from Mike Vick. That'll calm everybody down.
Oh Lord. Oh man, Michael Vick, man, like, oh man, he's had like a huge jump. Like, he went from being Falcons quarterback to going to prison for dogfighting to getting out of prison, redeeming himself, kicking some tail at the Eagles, and now he's at Fox. Like, he's got like a career arc right there. Like,
well, I would say that it's very seldom that a professional athlete goes to prison for anything and it revolutionizes his personality. I don't want to necessarily say career, because if there is a downside to everything that went down other than the stupidity and the aggression part of what he was doing, morally, obviously very irreprehensible. But
true.
He turned his life around. So I guess him going to prison actually was beneficial, and you don't see that very often. So I agree with you. His story is amazing, but he was at the peak of his career, man. Like, we never really got to see everything that he could do. And then he came in and did a lot of phenomenal things with the Eagles, but I don't know, man. I think we may have missed some of the best years of Vic.
I feel like if he hadn't done what he did that got him in prison, we could have seen like whether he could have gotten that Super Bowl or not for the Falcons. Like where it's like the Falcons, they're like Charlie Brown at the pitcher's mound. I don't know why, but it's like they always come up short. It's like
You mean
nothing.
like the Cleveland Browns with drafting quarterbacks?
Oh, way worse than that. Like anytime they're in the postseason, they always fall short. But the Browns, my God, their quarterback situation. It's like, oh, we're sick of Baker Mayfield. Yeah, he played hurt, but
He took you to the playoffs.
no, we don't care. We're gonna throw him away for Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
Deshaun Watson's pervert. Like he's doing some nasty. Yeah, we don't care. Deshaun Watson's better. Guess what? No playoff wins. No playoff wins.
And Jackson, how's Deshaun Watson playing?
Not so well. They
Like
lost to the
dog
Giants.
water.
They lost to the friggin' Giants. The Giants are way worse than where they were in like 1978 when they blew it against the freaking Eagles. Like, my God, they're pitiful. Like and
Well, why don't you just hey, I got an idea. Why don't you just tell me how you really feel?
Ooh,
Me?
they are Browns.
No, not you.
But the Browns, man, I have a weird feeling they're gonna make Kevin Stefanski the fall guy, where it's like it's not his fault, but still his fault.
Yeah.
Not Deshaun Watson, but it's your fault.
Bro, if Mike Gundy was smart, he'd make Casey Dunn the fall guy. Like tomorrow.
Like honestly, you know, for some of the NFL teams, like they make the head coaches their fall guy, which I have a feeling that's going to happen with the Giants. Not blowing all your money on Daniel Jones, but oh, you're the fall guy, Brian DeBall. Yeah, you got the Giants to the playoffs your first year, but
Yeah,
it's all your fault. You didn't do anything correctly. It's never our fault.
What a dummy.
I would not take that job. I mean, I would not want to go there. I would not want to go to the Giants, the Browns, the Commanders, or the Panthers. Like, I mean, the Panthers, man, that's a fate worse than hell.
I mean, it's early, but they're playing a little bit of real football, at least seemingly at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, but their owner, David Tepper, he's the new Dan Schneider.
Oh, yeah. I mean, have they fixed? No, that's Washington that has the poop pipes falling out of the stadium, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. They were like, because I remember, you know, the Commanders changed their name from the Redskins to the Commanders, and in return, they were supposed to get a new stadium. They haven't gotten that still. No new stadium, no new renovations, nothing, zero zilch. Like it's so bad that even the Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts had to comment on it. Oof.
I think that what's happening to the Washington Commanders is a byproduct of them bending and caving to a bunch of ridiculousness that had nothing to do with football.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really just, you know, bend over.
Washington let politics drive their future success, and that's why you're seeing the product that they're putting on the field, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't really let outsiders that don't even watch football. Like, it doesn't matter where they lean in politics, religion.
Yeah.
You can't be like, oh, the angry mom is at my doorstep. She's gonna be mad at me. Yeah, well, the angry mom at your doorstep is mad anyway. Okay, she's having a venting session at the nail salon, painting her nails, talking about what an a-hole you are. Either way,
exactly.
She's not paying money, taking time out of her day to watch you. So I mean, it's just, my God.
It's a wild ride, man, but it's also a wild time that we're living in. I mean, heck, dude, I know this is way off topic, but this UNLV quarterback situation is wild. And now they have a running back that's leaving too in the middle of the season. Like, I understand that Obviously, there was some monetary value agreements that aren't exactly coming to fruition. I get that. But how do these jackwagons, and who's telling them that it's a good idea to quit on your team mid-season, and that's going to equal you getting a lot of success and a lot of other universities that want you to come quit on their team too? Like, what are we doing, man?
Somebody was in his ear about how, hey, now that you led your team to victory against Kansas and Houston, you should try to get this or that in your contract. It's like that's why you gotta like be careful about having somebody that's related to you or somebody that you know from back in the day in your inner circle, like for signing contracts. Because like
Yeah, I think this could be boiled down to, if you're going to do it the right way as it pertains to this exact scenario, listen to Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy said, we're not negotiating anymore. This is football season. We focus on football. During the spring, bowl games, if you want to talk about money, I get it. It's part of the business now. I don't like it, but it is what it is. But
yeah,
after spring and fall camp are over, it's football season. Stop asking me for more money. Tell
yeah,
your moms, your dads, your agents, stop calling me. I'm not going to talk about money in the middle of the season. Now, if
no,
anything, we should be talking about giving donors refunds for all the money they put together for Ollie Gordon and this offensive line. Because if you're looking on return on investment, it ain't happening, Captain.
nope. But I wonder with all that NIL stuff because Coach Gundy's not been too crazy about it,
Not
and
until last year.
no, because we saw like Nick Saban retire because he was like, you know what, I'm sick of this.
Yeah.
How long are we going to see Coach Gundy in Stillwater?
I really honestly think that last year, he kind of dove back in. I think that it developed a new love of the game for him because you're seeing a more exuberant Mike Gundy in press conferences. You're typically seeing a more upfront and open Mike Gundy as well. And he seems to be enjoying himself even more so than when he was young. So I think last season, inspired him to do this for another 5, 6, 7 years. But I also will admit that I'm assuming that he anticipated this season ending with double-digit wins, Big 12 title, CFP appearance, that type of stuff. I could see if this season goes completely backwards, I could see it making him a little dejected, and maybe instead of 5 more years of Gundy or 7 years, we only get 5. But I would say anywhere from 3 to 7, with a good middle range of at least 5 more years.
Well, I want to see some more coaches be able to see if they can crack that 300 win threshold, but I don't know if that'll happen because I know we're not in the days of coaches going for 40 years at the same head coaching position, or that feels like those days are coming and going.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mike Gundy and Kyle Whittingham are really the only two left and then you have Dabo Sweeney, who's been there for quite some time. But I mean, as we're sitting here talking about NIL and coaches being reluctant to be involved or supportive, you have Dabo Sweeney. He's not necessarily tanking Clemson, but he's taken Clemson from the top of the heap to being a mid-ranging team. And it's all because of his not reluctancy. Mike Gundy was reluctant, yeah. And then he came around. Nick Saban was reluctant, didn't exactly love coming around. So it kind of helped walk him out the door. Dabo Sweeney is not being reluctant. He's being downright refusal mode when it comes to NIL, which is just, it's crazy, man. Like, I understand you don't love it. I don't love it. I understand you don't think it's great for college football. I don't think it's great for college football. But I understand that if you're not at least participatory in NIL and transfer market, that you're probably going to struggle.
Yeah. In this day and age, you got to make sure that you're really good at getting transfers from the transfer portal, and you got to get recruits out of high school as well. You got to get a little bit of everybody.
I think so. Deion Sanders doesn't. He thinks you can just go all transfer portal and it'd be great. But I think that locker room is a dumpster fire, buddy.
I mean, like complaining about your O line, like putting them on blast like that in a press conference.
And nobody seems to be talking about the fact that Shedeur Sanders walked off the field while his team was on the field playing when there was almost 3 minutes left.
Mhm.
Like, and he wasn't hurt, right? So don't give me that he was going. He left that team because he was
Yeah.
done with that game, because that is something that's encouraged. I would imagine, or at least I would hope and pray till I'm blue in the face, that if Alan Bowman walked off the field with 3 minutes still left on the clock and his offense was on the field and he wasn't hurt, that he would never play another snap in Boone Pickens Stadium ever again. I would assume that would be the case. But at Colorado, it's okay. They can fight in the locker room. Their coaches can encourage fighting in the locker room. They can stand there while fights happen in the locker room. They encourage hazing and all this other crazy stuff that if it was anybody but Dion, they wouldn't be getting away with.
No. Because, I mean, they got a lot of 5-star players, but they got a 0-star culture.
Yep.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And it's, oh man, it's like if Coach Saban was still coaching, and you know, if he saw that, he'd be like, get your butt back on the field. Like you think like the way he was,
never put your pads on here again.
Yeah, because like I don't want a 0-star culture. It's horrible. You don't want that. It's like they kind of need like Pat Riley just to tell them, 5-star team my butt.
Right.
I mean, it's like Colorado and Florida State to me have been two of the most irritating teams this season. Like, I get it. Florida State got screwed over, but you can only be the victim for so much.
Did they get screwed, or is the ACC just that bad?
It can be. I think both things can be true at once.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Because honestly, because I get the ACC didn't have your back, but I mean, you can't just go on a venting session expecting everybody to constantly care forever and ever.
Well, I'm just saying, no. I meant the ACC being so bad in regards of them not having any quality wins.
Oh yeah.
So like a paper tiger, 13-0.
Oh yeah.
Now, by the metrics that the CFP has put forth, yeah, they definitely got screwed.
Oh,
they absolutely got screwed. But even with the Jordan Travis situation, I kind of understand the reluctancy because of how down the ACC was. But, at the end of the day, that is another layer of frustration because the BCS fell apart because they weren't adhering to their own standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here we are with the CFP. They set standards, and then they don't adhere to their own standards. And instead of us hooting and hollering about it, they're like, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to 12 teams next year anyway. It's okay that we're going to screw Florida State this year because next year they'll get in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was wrong. And at the same time, Florida State letting it carry on over to 2024, acting like, the crazy significant other saying, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you.
Oh, they're saying that, dude.
It's like, it was so freaking, like, at first I felt bad and I'm like, you know what? Let them go Big Ten, SEC. But then I'm just like, you know what? I don't even care. I don't care. We're done hearing about it. Let's play football. But then what happens? They lose to Georgia Tech. They lose to Boston College. They lose to Memphis, and they're hooting and hollering and celebrating over beating Cal 14-9. This isn't Aaron Rodgers Cal. This isn't the 1938 Rose Bowl Cal. That's god-awful, pitiful Cal. Well, not god-awful, pitiful, but mediocre Cal.
Yeah, they're a mid-level ball club at best, as is Boston College.
Oh, yeah.
As is Memphis, as they just proved Saturday.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were hung over from that Florida State game. I really hope their Silverfield didn't plan on going on a bunch of interviews that week. Because we saw like Thomas Hammock. He was on every show I could find after that Notre Dame win. He was on Part of My Tape with Barstool Sports. The Dan Patrick Show, Fearless with Jason Whitlock. He was on all these shows I could find, At Buffalo, they're not sitting there thinking about, hey, are we going to be on Club Random with Bill Maher this week? They're not thinking about that. They're thinking, we got to beat Northern Illinois. They're on their high horse. We're going to beat them. And they did.
Part of the gig, I guess.
Well, I can just tell you right now, I'm not sitting, because if I were certain teams, I wouldn't be thinking about what kind of show I'd be on. I'm not sitting there thinking about whether Pat McAfee has my phone number. I'm thinking about what I got to do on the field.
Yeah, well, that's that can be the conundrum of the year, I guess, because Mike Norvell's wearing a lot of lipstick, and there's not a lot left of the pig to keep promoting the lipstick with, man.
Oh man, I hope SMU beats Florida State this Saturday. That would be so funny.
I can't talk about SMU right now because of what they did to TCU. But goodness me, man, SMU, they have the ultimate little brother complex of like every team in the Power Four. They're like the only Power Four team that knows they're not really Power Four, so they're scratching and crawling like they are, but they definitely taught TCU a thing or two. So I guess I'll back off of that one for now.
I don't know what's going to happen with Sonny Gates, but it is not good at the moment.
Well, I don't know. It is weird to go from playing for a national title to being on the hot seat in 2 years, but it's because it's fair for us all to say now. He won because of Gary Patterson's recruiting classes and talent. And he's an offensive guru, which is fine. But that TCU defense under Gary Patterson was always top 25. So if they had a decent offense, they were always going to have an opportunity. But you could bet your bottom dollar and bet your house as well that the TCU defense under Gary Patterson was going to be good. This TCU defense is horrendous, and they were borderline worse last year. So they have to score 70 points a game to win. And I just don't, I don't know that Josh Hoover is a whole lot better than Alan Bowman.
It's going to be disastrous for the Horned Frogs. And like you and I both said, they're nowhere near where they were 2022. And, all those Patterson players are gone.
Right.
So it's that magic has worn off.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, this is it's a wild time in the Big 12. I don't know what's happening, man. I know that UCF can run the ball like 2012 K-State. That's concerning. I know that Utah, schedule-wise, doesn't really have a lot of hang-ups left, except for maybe at UCF.
Yeah, because Central Florida is a weird one. Everybody talks about Malzahn teams, they lose. Nobody thinks about them or talks about them, they win.
I think Gus Malzahn, I don't know. It's kind of like Gundy in a sense of lots of wins, but not necessarily the big wins.
Malzahn is overhyped.
Dude, that offense they're running, I mean, it's basically the Big 12's version of a triple option.
Oh, yeah.
And, and they're also, like RJ Harvey is so quick and so difficult to get down. And then you have to adjust to a 6'5", 235-pound running back / tight end that looks like Blake Bell just bulldozing himself down the field. Dude. And they have another back. His name escapes me at the moment, but I think he's the upper half of the Big 12 yards per carry as well. So, yeah, dude, they're already going to be difficult because the Florida talent pool is so readily available, and Miami's been down, right, for the most part, as has Florida State, as has Florida. So UCF's been able to kind of pick and poke some of these transfers from the local area. Plus, they have a big-time alumni base. I would assume with a big alumni base, they have a decent donor base. So they have all the hallmarks to end up being very good. I thought it would take them a few years, but that triple option kind of thing they have going is going to be hard to stop, as is Kansas State's.
Yeah, and I know, like, everybody's talking about Central Florida this week, and it just feels like they'll lose to Colorado. And, we saw Central Florida making that huge comeback against TCU. Guess what? I don't think a lot of everybody in the national level college football even had Central Florida TCU on their radar. What happens? Central Florida wins. That they always Malzahn teams do that. When everybody either talks bad about his teams or doesn't even have them on the tip of their tongues, they thrive. And it's always a good idea to have it on your parlay.
I can tell you whatever their over under on rushing yards is, I'll be betting the over.
Oh yeah.
But see, that was Oklahoma State last year. You knew Ollie Gordon was going to go for $150 every game.
Yeah. And
weird, man.
Oh yeah, because I don't even know if I don't even think a lot of people talked about Oklahoma State Central Florida last year. Like a lot of people on national level didn't even have that game on tip of their tongues. What happens? Central Florida wins.
Well, they didn't just win, man. They
slaughtered.
They made it very convincing.
Yeah.
That was one of those times where we noticed that if Alan Bowman has to throw the team on his shoulders and throw us to a victory, it wasn't going to happen. And again, that's why teams this year decided we're going to load the box because we're going to bet that if we can stop Ollie, we can beat Oklahoma State. Now, that didn't work up until Utah, but that's the difference. When Alan Bowman's off and we can't run, that's that.
Oof. Well, I will say, I hope to see Oklahoma State has some awesome days on Saturday against Kansas State, especially for your sake and Cowboy Nation's sake. Because I'll tell you right now, I want to see Ollie Gordon make some action. I'm ready to see him.
Well, at this point in time, man, he needs it, right? Because he started the season a bona fide, certified top 20 pick by a lot of the early draft prognostications. As it sits right now, I don't know that he's even a third-round pick. He may have went from a top 20 guy to a fourth-round guy in 4 or 5 games if he cannot get this figured out.
True. But on the bright side of being a draft pick in the mid-level, you're a hidden gem for somebody in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I hope he has a lot of NFL success, but I hope he has more success right now so we can win a freaking Big 12 title.
Agreed. I want to see him get it rolling. And Cody, I just want to ask you, what have you got going on at Locked On Oklahoma State this week?
Well, what I have on tap is talking about the top matchups for Oklahoma State and Kansas State, some of the key players to pay attention to, other than the 3 guys in the backfield I just previously mentioned. And then I'll get down to some of the Big 12 picks and predictions. At the end of the day, man, I think that our offensive coordinator has got a lot to, figure out. Defensive coordinator, it's been a little tricky, but he's done some positive things that are glimmers of hope. So I don't know, man. Hopefully I'm just being negative for no reason, or maybe I'm being negative for bulletin board material. And if that's the case, you can plaster my face everywhere, because I again will continue to say our offensive lineman is not carrying lunch pails and hammers. They're carrying feathered down pillows, and that has to stop.
Well, I will say, though, if you want some top-notch Oklahoma State expertise on the football program, basketball program from this guy, go to youtube.com at Locked On Oklahoma State. Go to All Day O State on X, and you can find him on Instagram. And you can find more on Locked On Oklahoma State on LockedOnPodcast.com, and find more on Cody Stovall on LockedOn.com. And you can find him on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, where you can find your podcast. And in the meantime, for me, you can find me on Jackson Johnson 979, where I'm 125 subs away from the magic number 500. I'd love to get there before my birthday. And you can also find me on X on Jackson VOCFB, and on Instagram and Threads at Jackson Johnson 543908, where I not only air all my Jacksonian episodes on X on this account, but you can also find my updates on these 3 sites where I just run my mouth about who's coming on the Jacksonian, so on and so forth, and what's going on with my channel. And of course, you can find me on Alabama at the Voice of College Football, where I co-host with Johnny Burtz Monday afternoons, 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where we go over the latest news and notes on the Alabama Crimson Tide, including Monday's edition of Crimson Tide Live, where you can find Palmer Toms from Dodds HQ at On3 joining us to give his take on the Alabama-Georgia matchup coming up on Saturday. And let me tell you, it'll be a wild ride in Tuscaloosa. And for that, I wish you all a happy Thursday afternoon, happy weekend, and to stay safe, stay cool, stay away from the heat, or if you're in hurricane weather, stay inside, protect each other, and keep each other safe. Happy days, everybody.